Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Like Sam. I'm your host Sam. Thanks for tuning in. Today I wanted to talk to you about the IR/suspended draft strategy for fantasy football. There's definitely been ones like these in the past, and I feel like every year there's definitely a really good player or two that is going to come back a little bit later that falls in the draft and slides down to a position that honestly where they're at or how they were doing is a place that you can get a lot from them and be able to plug and play them in and have them be a pretty reliable player for you. And I feel like there's a couple of players like that this year. And for the most part, they actually happen to be mostly wide receivers. So the way that my draft strategy is working, in my mind at least, is you go after a top running back in the first and second round. You can even try to do a quarterback in the second if you feel like they're going by really quickly. And then the third round, you're either going running back, and if you can get a quarterback second, you get the quarterback in the third, and then you get a wide receiver, you get a tight end, and then you move on and you go after the suspended and IR players, and then you end up later getting just a flex play to plug in while they're all out on your bench. So I feel like it's definitely a risky strategy because all these players that are on this list of mine, they have risks involved, whether it's more injury, time frame of when they're actually going to return, are they going to remain and have keep the chemistry up with the quarterback. So definitely a lot of questions still at the helm for them, but I feel like the cost of the risks is outweighed by the potential of the player, if that makes sense. So I feel like these guys just have a lot of potential, and they also are very stable and very good players that are going to be able to generate you points basically immediately when they come back. So the players specifically that I was going to talk about today were Rashee Rice, Jordan Addison, and Joe Mixon. But I also wanted to throw in there Chris Godwin as well as Christian McCaffrey, which they aren't necessarily going to be part of what I would do with them. But I feel like if they're available, it might not be a bad idea to go through with them. And I'll talk about that right now. So essentially my thinking behind why I like this draft strategy is, one, because there are so many suspended and injured wide receivers that I believe are going to have good potential for you when they come back. It's a benefit to you to target the running backs early and to not go wide receivers early, just because these wide receivers that are injured are going to come back, and I think they are going to play an immediate role for your team. So I really like either going two running backs from round 1 and round 2, and then trying to go after a running quarterback in the third. And then from there you get a wide receiver that you can trust, and then you try to go after a tight end. And then this is where you start making your moves towards the injured players, and you kind of just go down the line because fortunately, I guess that's kind of the way they've been falling. And then you can get to the point where around like the 10th or 11th, if you're in like a 12-team league or even a 10-team league, they should still be available to you, but you can get like a good flex player or a guy who still has potential and bring them in and do a good job for you. So specifically what I'm thinking is, well, I really like this strategy because I feel like it covers all areas if you're able to do it. Getting two running backs in the first 2 rounds, I feel like this is a great way to just stabilize the team. And I feel like the bigger your league gets in terms of the amount of teams that are in your league, like from 12 to 14 to 18, as long as you have a solid core running back foundation that's going to get you a lot of points, I feel like that's super important because they're just going to be more consistent for you than wide receivers will be. And if you can get the best at the beginning, it's just going to drive a lot of points for your team. So I really like going running backs in the first and second round. The third round, I really like going after like a running quarterback because essentially these running quarterbacks who are, scoring touchdowns, running the ball, they're getting you those rushing touchdowns, which some of them they're outscoring some of the best running backs in terms of like touchdowns scored. So when you get a guy like Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, who has scored like I believe 12 to I think Josh Allen scored 12 touchdowns rushing as well, but like Jalen Hurts had like 14 rushing touchdowns last season. Josh Allen last season, he was, let's see here. So he had 12 rushing touchdowns last season. Season before, he had 15. He's obviously going to be a big part of that aspect of their game. And then I like Jalen Hurts too because he can come in and also run the ball and get you rushing touchdowns. Last year, he ran the ball in 14 times. Year before, 15 rushing touchdowns. Year before that, 13 rushing touchdowns. Year before that, 10 rushing touchdowns. So they're scoring a lot of points for you, which I think is quarterback is super. I feel like people definitely go longer and you can get guys later in the draft. But when you want to build your team around like the highest scoring players, quarterbacks are obviously going to be right up there. So I really like targeting a rushing quarterback in like the first 3 rounds because they're going to score a lot of points regardless. So that's why I kind of like going him, Hurts or Allen in the third. And you can even do Lamar Jackson. I like him a lot as well. He did really well. He just didn't run the ball in as much, but he's been throwing a bunch of touchdowns lately too. So I like that doing that. Wide receiver wise, if you can try to do it in the fourth, or even if you want to go like a tight end like George Kittle, or somehow Trey McBride maybe falls. But I just kind of like George Kittle because he scores a lot of touchdowns. And if you're not doing that, I'm targeting a wide receiver at this point, which the wide receiver ones that are left around this point are like Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Those are the type of guys that I'm looking for. I even like Jerry Jeudy. He just doesn't really score that many touchdowns, or at least he didn't last season, but I'm hoping that maybe he could get that up a little bit. And then I like going tight end in like the 5th round, getting a guy like Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, David Njoku. These guys are, I mean, at least Travis Kelce, he had kind of an off year last season, but I feel like that was really because Rashee Rice was out and they were kind of dealing with a couple rookies and they just weren't really making things for their offense. They were just trying to do what they could to come out of games with a win. So I feel like they might be more offensively structured this year. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like especially the way that they played versus the Eagles in the Super Bowl, like they're going to come out hot and they want to start off doing as much as they can offensively. And I think Travis Kelce is going to be a big part of that again. So I think he still has a little bit left in the tank. I really like him. He as like a 5th or a 6th round pickup potentially. So I still think his duo is going to be strong. And then I like Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson if you can't get either of them. And even David Njoku. He's just a little bit more injury prone. David is. So I guess quarterback play is a concern too, but I think Joe Flacco should be fine with Njoku. And then this is where I'm getting into the injured and suspended wide receivers. So Rashee Rice is suspended. I really like him. I've talked about him before. Just the way he played his first 3 games last season, it stood out as he's the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs when he's healthy and when he's back. I like Xavier Worthy. I think he's going to do well for them when Rice isn't in there, but it's pretty clear that Rice is like the new connection for Mahomes, and he is like an automatic, I'd say almost like he could get you probably 100 yards pretty close a game. And I would not be surprised if he finishes at least like, he's obviously not going to finish as a top 5 wide receiver in terms of total points, but like when he's back, I can see him doing really well and still potentially finishing with 1,000 yards on the season and probably close to like 80 or 90 receptions. So I think he's going to be a great player. He's suspended the first 6 games. The next guy I like after that is Jordan Addison. He's suspended for 3 games. I think he has shown a lot of quality the last 2 years that he's been in the league, and he's been a reliable player for the Vikings as a wide receiver too, opposite to Justin Jefferson. So because they're covering JJ so much, it just leaves Jordan Addison open for points, and he's done a really good job the last 2 years of making things happen. So I like getting him. I like if you can get Chris Godwin to get him as well. But I'm not like super over the moon for him. If anything, if you can try to swing Emeka Ibuka, who is really going to be coming in for him, I'd almost rather have him, and he's a rookie this season. So I think he has a lot more potential than Godwin, but I feel like when Godwin comes back, he's still going to play a part. It's just, if I'd rather have someone, I probably would rather have the Emeka Ibuka half, but that's just me. And then next, I'd be trying to target Joe Mixon, who's going to be injured and on IR for at least the first couple of games for this season. I believe right now they're saying he's out the first 4 games. It could be longer. I think that's really the risk that you're going to be taking, is how long is he actually going to be out for the Texans. And the good news for him, or if you do pick him, Nick Chubb is available like right around the same area. So you can go get Mixon and then you can get Chubb, and you'll have, no matter who they're starting, it's going to be one of the two. So it's a good spot to get him as well. And then once you get these players, because you already have 2 or 3 of these guys, good flex plays to kind of put in while they're out, I'd say would be like Rashid Shaheed, Darnell Mooney, Marvin Mims. I like Rashad Bateman. These are guys who are really, really kind of sleeper material, but who kind of did pretty solid last season when they were healthy. If I had to pick any of these guys, I'd either go with Raheed Shaheed or Darnell Mooney. Mooney just because he was more readily available last season, and he seemed to do really well as kind of a flex play last season. And then Rashid Shaheed, I feel like he has a lot of upside to him, especially in an offense that isn't really doing anything. So yeah, and then from there you can get your second quarterback, which could be anybody from Jared Goff to CJ Stroud to potentially, if you can, Drake May. And then defense, kicker. I personally don't go after other tight ends, but I guess you could if you wanted to. I mean, I like Zach Ertz really late, but that's kind of how the strategy would work, and those are the players that I'd be looking for. I just like it, the fact that after a couple games, they're going to be back, and they're really going to bolster your offense or your fantasy team, especially later in the season. So if you can make the playoffs, once you do, you're going to be sitting in a pretty good spot, I feel like, if you're going in this type of draft strategy. Well, that was kind of all I had. Hopefully that made sense and you enjoyed this content. If you have any questions or comments for me about this strategy, feel free to reach out at bullseyefantasy1@gmail.com, or follow me on my podcast Instagram at soundslikesam.pod. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you do well this season in fantasy. All right, thanks. Peace.